This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the Talkstar Radio Network and the X-Zone Broadcast Network and our growing family of broadcast affiliates across Canada, the United States, Central America, the Caribbean, South America, the Pacific Rim, Australia, Asia, India, Africa, and Europe. My toll-free number worldwide is 1-800-610-7035. That is toll-free, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is Ric Wasley, and Ric grew up in the Boston area. As a college student, he played music and was involved in the vibrant world of social change that was Harvard Square in the late 60s. This later became the inspiration for his McCarthy Family series. Ric has been writing for over 30 years. He's been published in several literary magazines in Los Angeles and San Francisco while living in California. He currently lives outside Boston with his wife and 3 children, works for a major media company, and he retains his love of music and writing. Joining me now is Ric Wasley. And Ric, welcome to the X-Zone.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate being here, and I have to say I love your introduction music there.
Oh, thank you very much. In fact, you actually played on the same stage with or as Bob Dylan going back a number of years ago.
Yeah, it was, now, of course, I was a very young man at that time. I am, naturally.
Weren't we both, yes.
But, yeah, I was kind of a student, actually, well, probably in high school at that time, and very, very involved in the burgeoning folk music scene that centered around Harvard Square in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And This was where all of the aspiring folk singers came, and interestingly enough, people who became very, very famous later on. Groups like Peter, Paul, and Mary played, and of course, one of the biggest headliner names then was Joan Baez. And I think the incident that you're thinking of was when I was in there one weekend, and Joan Baez, who was the headliner then, I think it was probably about 1963, as I recall. I would have been 17. And I had come into to this place, the Club 47, which was a music club actually started by Harvard students. And because they were not allowed to serve liquor or have any kind of a club or establishment, they actually made it into a private club. And they put it onto a storefront on Mount Auburn Street, and they called it the Club Mount Auburn 47, which later became legendary in the folk music scene. And in order to get in, what you did was you signed up, you got a little membership card. Yeah. So technically they weren't breaking the law. It was a private club, but this is where everybody came. And there's one particular night that I was in there. I had my guitar, and Joan Baez was the headliner, and she had brought with her up from New York City a guy who'd been playing with her around Greenwich Village, and she had taken under her wing, and she introduced him to everybody, and this was really my first time of ever hearing him. He was kind of a young, skinny kid by the name of Bob Dylan.
Ric, you and I have to take a commercial break. Please stand by. Ric Wasley is our special guest. Here's his MySpace page, X-Zone Nation, www.myspace.com facebook.com/Ric Wasley, and that's RICWASLEY. Rick and I will return on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break. Don't go away.
This is Kevin Randall. For nearly 30 years, I have been investigating the case of the Roswell UFO. I have interviewed hundreds of people and stood on the crash site. Now in Roswell in the 21st century, I have reviewed dozens of hours of audio and videotaped interviews, examined hundreds of files that relate to the crash, and have returned to Roswell in an attempt to put all that information into the proper perspective. For the first time in Roswell in the 21st century, I have made a dispassionate reevaluation of all that material and provide a new look at what happened. This is a book that clears away all the clutter that has hidden the truth for so long, strips away the various lies that surround the case, exposes the Air Force attempts at cover-up, and found a core of solid information that tells us all where the case stands today. Roswell in the 21st century will be available in just a few weeks. For more information, please visit my website at www.kevinrandall.blogspot.com.
Gibbs A. Williams, Ph.D., is a practicing psychoanalyst, supervisor, researcher, and author in New York City. Much of his life has been dedicated to understanding nature and the uses of meaningful coincidences or synchronicities. His radical and original non-Jungian, non-mystical, non-magical theory of synchronicities illuminates much of the fog surrounding this challenging and perplexing topic. His ideas and manners are fresh, presented in a style that is both entertaining and highly informative. He is also an expert on crisis intervention, specially focused on violence reduction for the police and citizens, mastering anxiety, frustration, and stress without the use of medication, and effectively preventing and treating heroin addiction. Dr. Williams can be contacted at his email address at gwwilliamsny11@aol.com or visit his website at www.drgibbswilliams.com.
Shamanism is recognized as a method to access the quantum level. Mastery of shamanic skills puts spiritual information and healing power into your hands. Path Home Shamanic Art School, a bonded Colorado certified occupational school, has met rigorous state standards, ensuring its director and instructors have the qualifications to teach the shamanic arts. Path Home offers a certification program in blocks of study. Block 1, a 5-day intensive, will be held in the beautiful mountain town of Coaldale, Colorado, October 13th through 18th. Registration deadline is September 12th. Experience journey trance, power animals, helping spirits, sacred space, and life purpose. Come discover your power. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, in the magical world of shamanism. Call 303-775-3431 or visit findyourpathhome.com.
With each new extreme weather event or terrorist act, it becomes increasingly obvious that we live in uncertain and challenging times. We all buy car insurance. Why not collapse and catastrophe insurance? Matthew Stein, an MIT-trained engineer and green builder, has written 2 outstanding books to help people prepare, plan for, and deal with everything from minor situations lasting a few days to full-on collapse. Matt's first book, When Technology Fails, is a manual for self-reliance, sustainable living, and surviving the long emergency. This massive book covers the gamut from first aid and emergency preparedness to alternative healing, renewable energy, primitive living skills, and 18th century technologies that could be critical to your comfort and survival in a long-lasting crisis. Matt's second book, When Disaster Strikes, is a comprehensive emergency preparedness handbook and survival guide. When Disaster Strikes is an essential item for every family's go bag. Both books are available at all usual sources. There's a wealth of totally free information posted at whentechfails.com, and author-signed copies may be purchased at mattstein.com. That's www.whentechfails.com and www.mattstein.com. Ric Wasley is our special guest exonation. www.myspace.com/Ric Wasley. That's www.myspace.com// RICWASLEY. Rick, you're an author of several fiction series that are strongly connected with the paranormal. Now, have you always been drawn to the paranormal?
Yeah, I'm one of these people who wants to believe. I have kind of two sides of my brain that are constantly in conflict. One is the perfectly rational side that says it's all nonsense, and the other side is like the X-Files. I want to believe.
Yeah.
So it's something that I felt. I'm not going to author a book about being picked up by little green men and dropped off on their way to Mars, but in fiction, I think the paranormal lends itself so well, because there's a part of a fiction writer that is always asking you to break free with your mind and consider other possibilities. And since so much fiction is really what if, I think that almost gives every fictional story a doorway, if you will, into the paranormal.
You've written 4 books and 4 short stories. How many of them have paranormal themes?
Probably half of them, maybe 60-70%, because even though I follow a lot of reality-based things, it comes over into the paranormal world. As I said, it seems to draw me for some reason into that.
Do you find, being in the media yourself and being a science fiction writer, that more and more people are talking about the paranormal these days than any other time that you can remember?
Yeah, I do think so, and I think somewhat because of the events of today. I mean, you had 9/11 and ongoing terrorism and recession and things like that, and people are certainly a little bit tense, and a lot of your life has gone over into the unexpected. Even reality is somewhat unexpected. So I think that opens you up a little bit more to the paranormal, and I also think that in situations like this, we open ourselves up more to different possibilities. You sit back and think, well, if my life has been turned upside down, 2 years ago, I had a job and there was nobody flying on an airplane who had a bomb in his underwear, and then you consider what's going on today. It kind of said, boy, there's things in this world which I can't explain and I can't control, and I think that's why you find people far more interested in the paranormal. And a great example of this is the huge interest that has arisen with all things vampire, for instance.
Oh, big time, yeah. Tell me, do you think it's more difficult to write fiction or non-fiction with paranormal themes?
I think it's much easier to write fiction. Now, a lot of people who are psychic researchers and things like that would probably disagree with me, but I think taking the paranormal as your theme and expounding on that and creating a story around it seems to be a natural progression, and that's what I've been kind of finding myself doing more and more, is incorporating that into my fiction as what seems like a natural progression to me.
Where did your interest in the paranormal start?
Oh boy, probably from my grandmother, who was kind of a hard-headed lady, very practical on the one hand, but she had a side which really loved all things paranormal, and my mother as well. Again, my father's very, very practical. My mother always used to read me stories about fairy tales and fantastic creatures and things like that, and I just picked up on that, and I think a lot of my life was spent living with one foot in the real world, but always looking around the horizon for those things which you couldn't see. And as I said before, not quite believing that they're there, but wishing they were.
When you're doing research to write a book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, let's talk about the fiction and some of the paranormal books that you've written. Do you actually go to these places and do research? And have you ever experienced anything that you would consider to be paranormal at those times?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do really believe that you should know within all realm of possibility the places that you write about. So in my books, which are set for the most part in New England, because that's where I live, that's where I spent the greater part of my life, I have been to literally all of the places that I write about in my books. And a lot of times I have been sitting in a place, especially old places. And New England abounds with old country inns and taverns and things like that, old houses. And I spent a great deal of time, as a matter of fact, on my third book, The Scrimshaw, which is one of the McCarthy Mysteries books. There is a place that's actually fairly close to me, but it was made famous by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow in his poem and book about Tales of a Wayside Inn. And that's what it's called now. It's called The Wayside Inn, but it dates all the way back to almost the end of the 17th century. And I got friendly with the innkeeper over there, and I told him I was doing research for one of my books, and he let me go upstairs into one of the rooms that is roped off from the public. It's kind of like, half of it is like a living museum, the kind of places where you can go and you can look in, and there's maybe a sheet of glass or something like that.
Yeah.
But you see the room, it's set up exactly the way it was in 1750 or something like that. And so anyway, he let me in there, and I sat on the wooden planking floor, these huge old wooden planks worn by centuries of feet. And I sat in there with a notebook and a pen, and I watched the room, and I watched the sun coming through the window, and there's a scene in this book where my two heroes, Nick and Bridget, are in this inn, and they're looking for a clue. And one of the reasons I was there is that I had to pick a place that would have been able to have a clue hidden for 150 years. And so as I watched the late afternoon sun going across the wall, I noticed that for about 30 seconds it illuminated maybe a half-inch wide slot between a great big old hand-hewn beam and the wall. And in that moment, it looked to me almost like there was something there. And so I got up, I went over, and I looked, and no, it was nothing there. It was really just a cobweb that had caught the light just right. But I incorporated that into my book. So in my book, they actually find a clue in there. There's an old letter that's been stuffed in there. And as I was sitting there, I felt almost like I was connected back to that time, because everything in the room was of the 18th century. And the bed and the furniture and the windows and just the way the room was, it had that old kind of musty smell. And it would have been very easily to feel that you were just whisked back in time. So I don't know whether you would call that paranormal or an author's very active imagination, but when I write those scenes, I really feel connected to that time and feel very much of a paranormal sense.
Do you feel at times that you actually go back in time to the very time when these rooms were being occupied, and that you're actually reliving the moment with the people that you're writing about?
Yeah, I do, and interestingly enough, I belong, and probably not that much of a stretch to think about it. I'm in a historical reenactors group that in New England, this is very big. We reenact battles out of the Revolutionary War and things like that. So I actually have these, if you will, costumes that I get dressed up in. And the tricorn hat, and I carry an 18th century musket, and have all of the accoutrements and things like that. And there have been many, many times when I'm doing a battle reenactment, and I think guys who have done things like a Civil War battle would also tell you that, when you could swear that you are actually inhabiting your body, but a different spirit, a different feeling is there. I remember once we were doing the Battle of Lexington and Concord, and it was a very, very, very foggy morning, and our troop was drawn up in a line, and we could hear the drums and the fifes from the redcoats coming, and out of the fog, as they proceeded up the hill.
All right, Rick, we're going to have to take a cliffhanger here. We'll get back to the rest of the story on the other side of the news break that I have to take right now, as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
It was a terrifying experience.
I thought we was going to go to jail for murder.
That day, we were a little behind, so we worked until it was starting to get dark.
We loaded up the equipment and hadn't driven very far when we caught glimmers of this glow coming through the trees. I urged Mike to hurry up and get up there.
Travis had the door open before we even stopped. As he got closer, I heard the sound.
One of the guys said, "You feel that?"
I really panicked then.
I told him, "Get the hell out of here."
It didn't come directly to me, it came to a deputy sheriff.
Three of us volunteered right away to tell him what had happened.
Sheriff Gillespie definitely didn't believe it.
He says that we better be certain, because we get in a lot of trouble.
When we went to search the next day, they split us up, and the whole time the deputies asked me, if you just tell us where the body is, we can all go home and get this over with.
We're talking about 100 people combing through the wooded area. Nothing turns up.
All week long, I've been hearing they're going to set it up to make you guys look guilty.
We're a rough-looking bunch then. Some of us have been in trouble with the law before.
And y'all ain't never going to come out of that jailhouse.
We couldn't get out.
I tried to sneak out the back door the day of the polygraph test. I was scared to death.
On top of that, you have media.
I literally would be on 2 telephones at the same time.
We've even got some coops in here now that's coming in and out to see the freak show, as they call it.
Everyone descends.
I just wasn't going to stand there and listen to it anymore.
Grant, he says, "This is Travis. I'm back. I need help." When I did hear that he had been returned, it was almost as unbelievable as the original thing.
I just looked at my mom and says, "I told you we didn't kill him."
Travis Walton reappeared after several days with a bizarre story about a ride in an unidentified flying object.
People were desperate to explain it away.
Why are you sticking up with Travis for all this time? You know this really didn't happen.
What happened to Travis after we took off in that truck, I can't tell you.
I hated Travis for a long time after this. My whole world just tore up.
But I believe every word Travis said about it. He's never lied to me about nothing.
It's a net negative. We lost our jobs in the immediate aftermath.
And now you're not able to talk about it with anyone because you know that they're going to laugh at you, they're going to look at you like you're crazy.
But if you don't come out and tell your story, somebody else is going to tell it for you.
There's a degree of responsibility. But certainly I have to accept the bad. If I can direct what's happened in a way that I can make something good happen in the world, I'm looking for it.
Order your copy of Travis, The True Story of Travis Walton, today at www.traviswaltonthemovie.com.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, High Tech with Corey Kay, and every minute of the 24/7, 365 programming of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 712-432-9459, courtesy of TalkStream Live. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 712-432-9459 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 712-432-9459 for the best of paranormal, new age, thought-provoking, sci-fi radio programming 24/7, 365.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money in abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
While science pursues fact, magic accesses the quantum level, bridging random facts to form truth. As long as science and magic remain separate and polarized, the truth cannot be known. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka. Join me on the Science of Magic radio program, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. During each episode, I'll be speaking with experienced and respected scientists and mystics. From astrologers to astronomers, from medical doctors to shaman, the scientific method to dowsing and intuition, we'll weave together information from seemingly divergent practices to promote unity and enlightenment. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic right here on the Mutual Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.thescienceofmagic.net.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. We're coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the Talkstar Radio Network and the X-Zone Broadcast Network. Toll-free worldwide, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour, X-Zone Nation, is Ric Wasley. His website is his MySpace page at www.myspace.com/Ric Wasley, and that's RICWASLEY. Rick, before we went to the commercial break with the news at the bottom of the hour, you were telling us about something that happened during a reenactment of the Battle of Concord. There were the drums, there were the fife. You were dressed up in your military regalia. So take that on, because you've got me sitting on the edge of my chair here.
Well, it's one of those things where the probably overused expression chill down the back of your spine comes in, and I really this is a time I have to say that for real I forgot where I was and who I was, and I reacted to the scene unfolding before me as if I was really there. So I mean, you could say that quite literally another spirit from another time almost completely possessed me. Because remember, we're standing on the place where it was actually fought. And there were people there. There were Minutemen, which we were portraying, there who were killed. And so who is to say that there might not be some kind of energy force or something lingering? But as I watched the British line come up the rise of this hill and saw the tips of their bayonets poke out of the fog and heard the drums and the fife coming up, this real chill ran up my spine. And then to see the top of the hats, those big beaver miter-board hats that the grenadiers wore, and then you see the faces, and then the shoulders, and then the bright red jackets, and they come out of the fog, just coming nearer and nearer. And our captain is calling for us to to form ranks and take the command to make ready, take aim, and fire. And we fired, and of course, stuff like this, it's a reenactment, so there's no bullets, there's black powder in the guns, but this huge volley. And as I was standing there, and the British came on with their fixed bayonets, their officer comes out and tells them to charge. And for that moment, when they started to charge out of the mist, I understood what these people felt. And I have to say, I myself, the only feeling that I had was one of complete and utter terror. Because there I am with a musket with nothing in it and no bayonet on the front of it, and this huge line of redcoats screaming, coming at us. And I have to say that I know now why the colonial militiamen fought from behind stone walls, because as one, we all turned around, ran across the field, and hopped behind the stone wall. So in that moment, I really feel that there was another force or spirit or whatever you want to call it, who was sitting there right alongside of me saying, hey, you know what, Rick, you better move your butt and get over behind that stone wall if you don't want to get stuck.
Is it possible, Rick, that you were actually reliving a previous life?
Well, I can't say that I wasn't, Rob. It was one of those things where if I had stopped myself and really thought about it and said, okay, come on, you're just reenacting this and blah, blah, blah. But when you get taken by the moment and you're smelling black powder and you're there in the fog and you're seeing bayonets and things like that, is it imagination or is it something is really there? It kind of depends. If you feel, as I kind of do, that there is a residue of whatever life force was there, and I've read in my research hundreds and hundreds of accounts, especially on battlefields, hauntings on battlefields. People describe this all the time, going especially to Civil War battlefields where the carnage was just unbelievable, and where you have so many kids, 17, 18-year-old kids who are filled with life, brimming with life, and are cut down right in the middle of it. And I think it's, there's a startle factor there. 1 minute you're there, you're a young kid, you've got your whole life before you, and then slam, all of a sudden you're cut off. And I don't think it's outside the realm of plausibility or believability that kind of force could linger there, just someone, so surprised, so shocked that that this has happened and the force is still left behind. So, yeah, I do kind of think that, especially in places like that, that could happen.
Now, Rick, I see that you have a degree in psychology. Do you believe that the mental state of a person has a bearing on their belief in the paranormal?
Yes, definitely. I think there are people who are what I call receptors, and the way in which they believe, and it's a little bit, and again, I kind of go back to that X-Files thing of I want to believe.
I want to believe, yeah.
I think maybe almost less I want to believe, or I am very open to believe. But the thing that's always interested me is there are people who seem to be far more perceptive and seem to have far more ability to actually, I don't know what you'd call it, foresee things, to have some kind of a premonition. My grandmother was famous for having premonitions, but I've just seen a lot of them who would have something that would really work out. I had a girlfriend in college who had been tested at Duke University for a precognitive type of ability, and we used to play a little game. Well, not that little game, other little games. But we would have. I don't want to go there, but you know how college is.
Yep.
But no, we would have a kind of a little card game that we would play where I would hold a deck of cards and just pick one at random, hold it in my hand, and she would tell me what it was, first what color it was. Then she would go to the number and then the suit. And for the color, she was right, like 99% of the time. For the number, probably 70% of the time, and the suit, maybe 60 to 70% of the time. But in other words, far more than just random guessing. So from that standpoint, I kind of became a believer, and I think I still am, that there certainly is a psychic ability that some people have to perceive more things than other people perceive. And I've seen too many examples of that to do it. And a lot of people have that, and I don't even think they realize that they do, but what I consider them is receptors, so that if there is any kind of psychic or paranormal, if you will, residue, these people are somewhat attuned to see it. And I think maybe that's the difference between people who are hard-headed realists and people who are, constantly having psychic type of experiences. It may have a lot to do with how open you are to it.
Rick, in let me see, in your third book of your McCarthy mystery series, The Scrimshaw, you have the two major protagonists of the series, Mick and Bridget, at polar opposite ends of the paranormal belief scale. Mick, the son of a Boston cop, believes in only what he can see and touch, while Bridget, born and raised in County Cork, Ireland, believes in fairies, leprechauns, banshees, and all things paranormal. Do either of these views represent your very own view?
Actually, they both do. And I created Mick and Bridget to kind of bring two different points of view to the table. As you said, Mick is the son of a Boston cop, and he's very hard-headed. He is an ex-Vietnam vet, and has been trained pretty much to believe in only what he can see and hear. And Bridget, who is this tough, feisty, petite little girl from County Cork, Ireland, is exactly the opposite. And she was brought up in a very rich heritage of all things paranormal and ghostly and things like that. And I've used these two characters, I think, in many ways to work out my own feelings about paranormal. So in this particular book, which up to that point was probably the most paranormal book that I had written, I wanted to let the reader make their own decision about whether the events in this book were paranormal or whether they were real. So I kind of used both of my characters, and throughout the book, they're constantly challenging one another. Mick saying to Bridget, hey, look, I have a perfectly reasonable explanation for that. Here's why it happened. Bridget coming back and saying, oh, yeah, but what about this? So that when you get to the end of the book, they each have their own opinion, both of which sound logical. And what I'm hoping that the reader will do is when they come to the end of the book, they're going to decide whose opinion they think, in their mind, is the one that is the most valid. Is it the paranormal or is it the realistic? So I don't want to make up the reader's mind for them, but I really do want to stimulate the same kind of argument that I've always been pursuing in my own mind, even through, studying psychology and things like that. How much of the world can we see, and how much is there which can't be explained through rational means? So that's kind of what I was trying to do with that book.
Your latest book, Midnight Blue, takes on the hot new cult phenomenon of vampires. Now, how did you become interested in vampires?
That's funny because I think, like many people, had been a big-time vampire scoffer. And, I grew up, I'm sure like you did, Rob, you see all the Dracula movies, and, you go to the matinee, and who was it, Christopher Lee, always had the blood-dripping fangs and things like that. It always kind of hokey. And when the big vampire craze started, I guess it was, 2 years ago, or whatever, I was kind of skeptical. I was familiar with the classics and so on and so forth, but my wife and I started watching a program on HBO, True Blood, and that kind of got us hooked on the vampire. And then I was talking with my publisher, Marcy, of Wild Child Press out in Culver City, California. And I had just written a short story for her called The Night, which was kind of a gothic type of tale about a young married man whose bride turns out to be a vampire. And she said to me, gee, I really like that. And we talked about how vampires were, kind of taking over the culture. And she said, would you like to write one? And I thought a minute and said, yeah, you know what, I think I would. And that kind of began my study of things vampire. And one of the conclusions that I came to early on was there seemed to be a set of rules that somebody at some point in time wrote down, and these are the rules of vampires. But the thing that bothered me was, if nobody can prove that vampires really exist, how can you enforce the rules? I mean, who is it that says absolutely that if sun touches the vampire, he bursts into flames? I could find legends for it.
Right.
I could find a lot of books that said it. I could find a lot of films, and again, the ones I'm talking about, the old vampire films, and goes into flames, and there's nothing but a little bit of ash. But I couldn't find any realistic evidence for that.
All right, Rick, stand by. We've got to take our final break. www.myspace.com/Ric Wasley. That's www.myspace.com/Ric Wasley. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we do a wrap-up of tonight's show here in the X Zone.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right, transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone radio show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, High Tech with Corey Kay, and every minute of the 24/7, 365 programming of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 712-432-9459, courtesy of TalkStream Live. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 712-432-9459 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 712-432-9459 for the best of paranormal, new age, thought-provoking, sci-fi radio programming 24/7, 365.
Coming soon to the X-Zone Broadcast Network is A Different Perspective with me, Kevin Randall, as your host. We'll be taking a close look at what is happening in the world of UFOs today with side trips into the paranormal. Guests will range from those who are household names to those who have a different perspective on a variety of topics. No topic will be taboo, but there will be tough questions asked as we all search for the truth about UFOs, the paranormal, and those things that excite us. Sometimes we'll agree with a guest and sometimes we won't, but we'll try to keep the program topical. For those of you who would like to read, be sure to visit www.kevinrandall.blogspot.com and remember to listen to the other fine programs on the X-Zone Broadcast Network at www.xzbn.net. This is Kevin Randall. For nearly 30 years, I have been investigating the case of the Roswell UFO. I have interviewed hundreds of people and stood on the crash site. Now in Roswell in the 21st century, I have reviewed dozens of hours of audio and videotaped interviews, examined hundreds of files that relate to the crash, and have returned to Roswell in an attempt to put all that information into the proper perspective. For the first time in Roswell in the 21st century, I have made a dispassionate reevaluation of all that material and provide a new look at what happened. This is a book that clears away all the clutter that has hidden the truth for so long, strips away the various lies that surround the case, exposes the Air Force attempts at cover-up, and found a core of solid information that tells us all where the case stands today. Roswell in the 21st century will be available in just a few weeks. For more information, please visit my website at www.kevinrandall.blogspot.com.
What Happened in Benghazi is revealed by Nicholas Genix, author of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. He informs the American people that President Obama deceived them by advocating a strong foreign policy prior to the 2012 presidential election, and Hillary Clinton supported this deception. As the title infers, there is a connection between Obama, Islam, and Benghazi. Ample evidence informs Americans that Obama's early indoctrination in the Quran developed an affinity for Islam, why the Quran is the source of discontent in many countries, and why the Obama foreign policy deception led to poor military action and caused the loss of American lives in Benghazi. Genix provides 36 questions for the Select Committee on Benghazi to validate if Americans are justified to mistrust President Obama and Hillary Clinton. An overview of Obama, Islam, and Benghazi is presented on the website www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. Afterlife expert Roberta Grimes was the first one to say that dying can be fun. Now her best-selling book, The Fun of Dying, is available in stores worldwide. So if you wonder whether death ends life, how it feels to die, or what heaven might be like, The Fun of Dying was written for you. And if you have always been afraid of death, or if you worry that your life has no meaning, let The Fun of Dying ease your fears and bring new meaning to your life. Nothing said in The Fun of Dying is based on the teachings of any religion. Instead, Roberta draws on evidence to explain how death happens, how it feels, and what comes next. A lot of the best death-related evidence was produced in the first half of the 20th century. When it is put together with recent discoveries, it tells a consistent and amazing story. Roberta Grimes blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Her wonderful book, The Fun of Dying, is available on Amazon and at stores worldwide wherever books are sold. And welcome back, everyone. I'd like to take this opportunity of thanking all our guests tonight. In hour number 1, I spoke with Vivian Gale. Hour number 2, Chelsea Murphy and I discussed Colorado Springs and the haunting activity that happens there. Micaiah Hart in hour number 3. And my final guest for the evening, this hour number 4, is Ric Wasley. And Ric's website is www.myspace.com/Ric Wasley. That's RICWASLEY. That's myspace.com/Ric Wasley. First of all, Ric, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. And let's wrap up with the vampires, because there are so many people today who are just into these vampire television shows, and there's even vampire clubs out there now. So, as a psychologist, what do you believe the attraction is to the vampire cult?
Well, you know, it's funny that you should mention vampire clubs, because in researching this book, Midnight Blue, I actually researched some vampire clubs, some vampire organizations, and actually used that in the book. There are several different scenes which are there, and I think a lot of what is behind it is, well, for lack of a better word, being a vampire is kind of cool. You get to dress up in a lot of black clothes. If you're into kind of the punk goth look, that goes very, very well. But also the kind of portion of it that goes along with the paranormal, and especially now the trend is vampire is kind of a young thing. I mean, you really don't see a lot about vampires where it comes out like the original German movie Nosferatu.
Yes, that's right.
Where he's, where he's old and he's got, the foot-long fingernails and thoroughly disgusting. Instead, now vampires are, are rock stars, and they dress very well. They tend to be extremely attractive and engaged in really fantastic sex for a long, long time. So, I mean, that's a very attractive kind of lifestyle. So, from a psychological standpoint, I think that there is a part of us that is predisposed and pre-programmed emotionally and psychologically to accept this kind of a hedonistic viewpoint of, why not have some fun? And especially, think about if somebody said to you, hey, Rob, you can be young forever. And you can...
Ric, I hate to do this, but we've just run out of time. Ric Wasley has been my guest this hour. Exonation, www.myspace.com/Ric Wasley. Well, that's it for tonight, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow night at 10 o'clock as once again we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. So until tomorrow night, take care of each other, love your children, and always keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. Good night, everyone.